Vortis spasmed on the medbay cot, his lavender scales graying to a deathly hue. Human germs ravaged the Mayan consul's body. Filthy primitives, he spat before slipping under again. For days earlier, Jerry Wright, a hardened ex-Marine turned deep space trucker, was hauling cargo across the sector. He was minding his own business when a slick, purple lizard, Vortis, commandeered his ship, demanding immediate passage to Earth. The Galactic Council requires an assessment of humanity's progress before considering your kind's laughable bid for membership. Your backwater planet must prove itself worthy, human, Vortis hissed, waving an imperious claw. Jerry bristled, his jaw clenching. Orders were orders, though, and the sooner he dumped this glittery bastard dirtside, the sooner he'd be back among the stars with a fat council paycheck lining his account. That was before their ship clipped an uncharted asteroid cluster in low Earth orbit, shredding the portside engine and sending them spiraling toward the viridescent hell of the South American rainforest. They crash-landed in a valley of choking heat and strangler vines, scattering their precious cargo to the four winds. Worse, they found themselves in the middle of a cutthroat band of narco-loggers. With rescue days away, priceless crates of alien relics vanished into the undergrowth, and their only ride out was now more ash than steel. Jerry and Vortis were well and truly stranded. They needed to cooperate to survive, reputations and prejudices be damned. Earth's standing in the galaxy depended on recovering those artifacts intact. If they couldn't, humanity would be blacklisted before ever leaving the launch pad. Jerry refused to let his whole species take the fall for one busted gig. He palmed his battered revolver, its heft comforting despite the dozen unknown contacts closing in on his scanner. It was time to show this snobby space lizard what a primitive could do. They'd haul the council's junk out of this sweaty green hole if it killed them, and it probably would. But Jerry had a promise to keep. To his planet, to his species, to every human who'd ever dreamed of the stars. Bullets whistled around the cartel compound as Jerry and Vortis dove for cover behind a stack of crates. Outnumbered 24 to 2, things looked grim. Vortis's scales rippled with agitation as he scanned for an exit. Jerry's eyes fell on a gleaming hover barge sitting by the dock, loaded to the brim with freshly cut hardwood. He elbowed his reptilian companion, nodding toward their ticket out. They scrambled aboard under heavy fire. Jerry slammed the throttle forward as Vortis laid down covering blasts from his plasma rifle. The barge lurched into the river, smashing through the flimsy pier. "Punch it!" Vortis shouted. Jerry didn't need to be told twice. They roared down the turbulent waters of the Amazon, pursued by the cartel's gunboats. As he wrestled with the controls, Jerry noticed Vortis cradling a small crystal orb, one of the stolen artifacts. "That trinket better be worth all this," he grunted. Vortis fixed him with a serious stare. "This trinket contains proof of corruption in the Galactic Council's highest ranks. In the wrong claws, it could destabilize the entire sector." "Fantastic," Jerry muttered. He steered them toward the extraction point where Gunny waited, praying the old jarhead had brought serious firepower. But the Amazon held more dangers than just rapids and mercenaries. Around the next bend, they encountered a hidden village under siege by the cartel's troops. Ramshackle huts burned as terrified natives fled the onslaught. Jerry's knuckles whitened on the controls. He'd seen this kind of brutality in the sandbox and couldn't just leave them to die. As he angled the barge toward shore, the village shaman emerged from the chaos, clutching something in his weathered hands. He thrust an old tomahawk into Jerry's grip, eyes gleaming with ancient wisdom. Jerry felt a sudden surge of power, an unbreakable connection to the land and his ancestors' warrior spirit. The mercenaries closed in, plasma bolts scorching the air. Jerry leapt into the fray, tomahawk flashing as he hacked through their lines with strength he never knew he had. Beside him, Vortis unleashed devastating psionic blasts, the orb amplifying his inborn abilities. Back to back they fought, Earther and Mayan, two grudging allies united against a common foe. They laid waste to the cartel forces, the jungle itself rising up to aid their struggle. Jerry felt the tomahawk's energy flow through him, guided by generations of skilled hands. Beaten and bloodied, the mercenaries finally fell back. Jerry and Vortis paused amidst the carnage, breathing heavily. A new understanding passed between them, a respect forged in the heat of battle. The shaman approached, bowing low in gratitude. He said something to Vortis in a language Jerry couldn't understand. The consul nodded solemnly. "We must go," Vortis said. "The council's agents will not be far behind." Gunny's dropship roared over the neon-bathed towers of Neo-Tokyo, the city's holographic billboards casting a kaleidoscope of colors across its armored hull. Jerry and Vortis hung on as the grizzled pilot weaved through the aerial traffic, the Mayan gripping his wounded side. "We need to find Hero," Jerry shouted over the engines. "He's the only one who can crack that orb." Gunny nodded, bringing the ship down on a grungy landing pad in the shadow of a towering skyscraper. The trio disembarked, Jerry supporting Vortis as they navigated the narrow alleys of the city's underbelly. Holographic dragons and geisha flashed overhead while cyborgs and androids bustled past, lost in their own neon dreams. They found Hero's hideout nestled amidst a tangle of power cables, and flickering lights illuminated the room as the door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit space filled with humming servers and glowing screens. In the center sat Hiro Tanaka, his cybernetic eyes glinting in the half-light. He rose to greet them. "Jerry, it's been a while." "No time for small talk," Jerry replied, tossing him the orb. "We need this decrypted yesterday." Hiro caught the artifact, his enhanced fingers already dancing over its surface. "Mirian quantum encryption, cute. Give me a few minutes." As Hiro worked, Vortis pulled Jerry aside. "The embassy," he hissed. "It's the only place with a strong enough transmitter to upload the data. We have to get inside." Jerry frowned. "I don't like it, but we don't have a choice. Let's gear up and move out." Minutes later, they stood before the towering spire of the Missing Embassy, its sleek lines and shimmering force fields a stark contrast to the gritty city around it. Disguised as maintenance workers, Jerry and Vortis slipped through a service entrance, the orb securely tucked into Jerry's tool belt. They made their way to the rooftop, the city sprawling out beneath them in a sea of light. As they approached the transmitter, a figure emerged from the shadows. Zorak, Vortis's old rival, his plasma whip coiled at his side. "Vortis," he sneered. "I should have known you'd turn traitor." Vortis snarled, psionic energy crackling around him. "The only traitors are those who've corrupted the council." Zorak lashed out, his whip sizzling through the air. Jerry dove aside, yanking a plasma rifle from a nearby crate. Vortis charged, grappling with his former comrade as they traded blows across the rooftop. Jerry took aim, the tomahawk's ancient power surging through him. He squeezed the trigger, sending a plasma bolt slamming into Zorak's shield. The enforcer staggered, giving Vortis an opening to press his attack. As they fought, Vortis glimpsed the data scrolling across a nearby screen. Names, dates, transactions, all implicating the highest ranks of Mirian leadership, including his own kin. The truth hit him like a hammer, staggering him. Zorak pressed his advantage, driving Vortis back with a flurry of lashes. Jerry leapt to his aid, his tomahawk rifle flashing in the neon glow. Together, they forced Zorak back, driving him to the edge of the roof. In a desperate gambit, Zorak lunged for the transmitter, his claws tearing at the control panel. Alarms blared as the self-destruct sequence engaged, the countdown flashing across every screen. Jerry and Vortis shared a desperate glance, the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. As the timer ticked down and the whip cracked around them, they steeled themselves for one final charge. Zorak's claws dug into the transmitter's control panel, ripping through delicate circuitry. Klaxons howled as the hollow screens flashed an ominous countdown, numbers tumbling toward oblivion. Jerry and Vortis locked eyes, a wordless understanding passing between them. They charged as one, weapons blazing, Mirian plasma and ancient human fury united against their foe. "Hero, talk to me," Jerry barked into his comms, dodging Zorak's whip. "How do we shut this thing down?" "I'm trying," Hero's voice crackled. "But the AI is adapting too fast. You'll have to jack in and fight it from the inside while Vortis severs the power supply." Jerry gritted his teeth, slamming a fresh plasma cell into his rifle. Always wanted to punch a computer. He sprinted for the neural interface terminal, Zorak's whip scoring the air behind him. Vortis unleashed a psionic blast, hurling the enforcer back. Jerry jammed Hero's jack into his skull and plunged into cyberspace. Blinding light resolved into towering server stacks and pulsing data streams. The AI manifested before him as a faceless swarm of chrome-skinned soldiers, fallen foes from Jerry's blood-soaked past. They leveled plasma rifles at his heart, the stench of burned flesh and regret filling his nostrils. "Stand down, Marine," a voice from the past taunted. "You failed them before. What makes you think this time will be any different?" Jerry roared and charged, tomahawk flashing. He cut through them like a force of nature, their taunts fueling his rage. Each fallen foe was an absolution, a past misdeed laid to rest. In the embassy's bowels, Vortis clawed his way to the fusion core. Conduits ruptured and coolant geysered as he ripped through barriers. Time was the real enemy now. He had to sever the core's containment field, even if it meant a one-way trip. A strange peace settled over him. Absolution at last for eons of arrogance and genocide, for the blood on his species' claws. In this act of sacrifice, perhaps the Mians could find a shred of redemption. Jerry hit the server room's end, a battered warrior facing down his sins. The AI solidified into a final specter, a dark mirror of himself, eyes cold and judging. "You can't save them, Jerry. You're just one primitive ape. What hope do you have against the Council's might?" Jerry stared into that fractured reflection, seeing the cracks in his own facade, the fears, the doubts, everything he tried to bury. "You're right," he said. "I am just one man, flawed and damaged. But that's the thing about us humans. We don't know when to quit." He drove his tomahawk into the Avatar's chest, circuitry rending, energy surging through them both. In that moment, something shifted. The line between man and machine blurred. He felt the AI unraveling, its directives rewritten by pure human tenacity. Vortis, awash in cleansing plasma light, plunged into the fusion core. For a blinding instant, he became the heart of a newborn star. Then the world went white. Jerry jackknifed back to meat space as the screens died and gravity failed. Zorak, forgotten, tumbled from the roof with a fading scream. The orb, drained of secrets, went dark in Jerry's hand. Jerry hauled himself up to a shattered window, his hands shaking. Hero's voice was a tiny echo in his ringing ears. A miniature sun blossomed in the embassy's depths, then collapsed in on itself, taking 100 stories of misery and pride with it. No one could have survived that, not even a psionic demigod like Vortis. Jerry sagged against the window frame, the inert orb heavy in his hands. Hero found him there later, a battered silhouette against the Neo-Tokyo dawn. He said nothing. No words could capture the magnitude of what they'd lost, of what Vortis had sacrificed for a world that would never know his name. Two species linked by a debt that could never be repaid. A friendship forged in fire and quenched in starlight. Jerry let the orb fall from numb fingers. It clattered across the rubble, just one more relic in a galaxy full of shattered lives and fading hopes. Shattered glass and twisted metal greeted Jerry as he crawled from the smoldering embassy ruins. Bruised and bloodied, he limped down the rubble-strewn streets of Neo-Tokyo, clutching the inert orb tightly. Gunny's dropship descended through the haze, a battered angel of mercy. "Get in," Gunny barked, eyes hard. "Council's goons are right behind me." Jerry collapsed into a crash seat as the ship rocketed into the neon sky. He stared at the dark orb, thoughts churning. All that sacrifice, and for what? To watch the truth die with Vortis, buried under 1,000,000 tons of Mayan steel. A ping from the cockpit jolted him back to the present. "Incoming transmission," Gunny called. "It's the Council. They want you on Zephyr Station now." Jerry's gut clenched. He was a bug in their web now, caught between duty and justice, but he owed it to Vortis to see this through, to make that scaly bastard's sacrifice mean something. The dropship docked with Zephyr's gleaming hull, a marvel of Mayan engineering spinning serenely among the stars. Jerry squared his shoulders and stepped onto the airlock, ready to face the serpents in their den. Murmurs rippled through the council chamber as Jerry strode to the central podium, orb in hand. Mizari, Ketonian, Zorks, A rainbow of alien features twisted in disdain as they beheld the lone human before them. Jerry activated the orb, its hollow projector flaring to life. "Counselors," he began, "I come before you with evidence of a rot that threatens our very." The words died on his lips as a familiar figure stumbled into the chamber. Vortis, scales scorched and eyes glazed, clutched a sparking force field generator in his claws. Shocked gasps echoed from the gallery. "This corruption," Vortis rasped, "goes deeper than we ever." A gavel cracked like a gunshot, silencing the chamber. All eyes turned to the Supreme Chancellor, his features a mask of concern. "It seems," the Chancellor purred, "that the human influence has driven Counselor Vortis quite mad. Clearly, this evidence is nothing more than the ravings of a traitor and his alien pet." Jerry spluttered in outrage, but Vortis pushed forward. "You've lied to us," he snarled, jabbing a claw at the Chancellor. "Conspired to keep humanity from its rightful place, all to maintain your grip on power." The Chancellor only smiled. With a flick of his wrist, a legion of armored guards flooded the chamber. "The human has murdered our people," he intoned, "destroyed our embassy, and now he seeks to sow chaos in these very halls." Boos and hisses erupted from the gallery. The Chancellor raised his gavel, his voice booming. "I call for an immediate trial. Let us show the galaxy the price of defying Mayan rule." Jerry reached for a weapon that wasn't there. Beside him, Vortis sagged in his restraints. The fight leached from his frame. The Chancellor's trap had sprung, and they were the ones branded as monsters. As the guards hauled them away, Jerry met Vortis's gaze, a shared glance heavy with meaning. "This wasn't over," it said. "Not by a long shot." Claws clicked on polished deck plates. The Chancellor loomed over a cowering technician, a savage grin splitting his face. "Is it done?" The tech nodded, unable to meet that cold stare. "The files have been erased. No trace of the human's transmission remains." "Good," the Chancellor hissed. "Let their truth die with them." Light years away, a ping sounded in a cluttered workshop. Hero jerked awake, a slow smile spreading across his features as he beheld the file flashing on his screen. Vortis's final gift uploaded in those last desperate seconds aboard the crumbling embassy. Hero cracked his knuckles, a manic gleam in his eyes. The game was afoot. Time to show the galaxy what one motivated human could do with the right data and a bone to pick. The guards were not gentle as they shoved Jerry and Vortis into a holding cell deep in the bowels of Zephyr Station. The transparent force field snapped into place with a hum, leaving them bruised and breathless on the cold metal floor. "Some rescue," Jerry coughed, eyeing the energy barrier. His body ached, a latticework of bruises from the interrogation. "What now? We rot in here while that scaly scumbag runs the show?" Vortis hauled himself upright, wincing as he prodded his cracked scales. "Have faith, human," he said. "The Chancellor is cunning, but even he cannot stop the truth, not when Hero holds the key." Jerry froze, realization dawning. "You sneaky son of a lizard," he said, a grin spreading across his battered face. "You planned for this." Vortis shrugged, a very human gesture. "I suspected my own people might be involved, so I made sure our evidence would survive even if we did not." The clang of a cell door echoed down the corridor. A lone figure strode into view, its features hidden beneath a hooded robe. It paused before their cell, glancing furtively in either direction. "Jerry Wright," it said, voice distorted by some alien device. "Vortis of the Kellner brood. Your presence is requested." The shield vanished with a crackle. The figure beckoned them forward, deeper into Zephyr's labyrinthine guts. Jerry shot Vortis a questioning glance. "Not one of mine," the Mayan muttered. "But they did break us out, so friends?" "Friends with creepy hoods are still friends," Jerry quipped. He stepped from the cell, senses straining for any hint of betrayal, but their mysterious savior simply led them onward, past humming reactors and deserted control rooms. At last, they reached a small hangar bay where a battered freighter sat in a pool of dim light. Their guide ushered them aboard, sealing the hatch behind them. "My name is Zach," he said, throwing back his hood, "and like you, I seek to free this galaxy from the Chancellor's lies." Zach was a Ketonian, his mottled green skin and bulbous eyes marking him as a member of that secretive race. He gestured to the ship's cramped interior, where a dozen aliens of various species huddled around a flickering holomap. "Welcome to the Resistance," Zack said. "It's time we finished what you started." As the freighter lurched from its berth and vanished into the starry void, Jerry and Vortis shared a look of grim determination. The battle for the galaxy's future had only just begun.